All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shan. Let's get into this video.
Negotiations and communications between them and the US. But the big issue here is that they said they're going to be implementing the full closure of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait alongside Hormuz. Now, it was pretty clear that the ceasefire was coming to an end pretty soon because of all the violations over the past few weeks, as well as the small country violating the ceasefire with Lebanon every single day. But Iran now closing both the Mandeb Strait as well as Hormuz is a completely different beast. Because the Mandeb Strait was essentially the back door that was being used to bypass Hormuz. It's the main reason we haven't entirely fallen apart. But now with Mandeb closed, the Saudi pipeline is now fully cut off, which means that oil is completely shut off from that region. But more importantly, it adds a bigger problem on top. Because 30% of global container trade goes through the Mandeb Strait. This is essentially 30% of global shipping, okay? So this makes the problem go from mostly an oil problem, an oil and energy issue, to a everything issue. Consumer goods. If you thought prices were bad so far, you haven't seen nothing, all right? This is the real thing. Because you got to remember that most of the general inflation that we've been seeing has been from, obviously, oil, but the inflation from the consumer goods has been due to diesel costs. The cost for the trucks to deliver the goods. Now it's a different story. It's a major disruption to getting the goods entirely. The shipping containers are now stuck there. There is a bypass around Africa, but it adds like 2 weeks to the trip, which, I mean, that just skyrockets the cost. We're looking at serious shortages now, mostly Europe and Asia, but the prices are going through the roof. Because, of course, just like oil, everything's traded on a global market. And, well, if they're getting hit with shortages, it's a global supply chain collapse. Hormuz alone was already a major inflation issue. Both of these closed, it's a totally different beast. This right here, what they just announced, is exactly what I've been warning about, okay? This is exactly why I've been saying, like, in all my videos, plant a garden, like, stock up on, like,
I'm in the video right there.
Beans.
Go to the next one.
Is that we are going to have a global recession probably by June, which isn't very far away, and likely followed by global depression in September or October. And I base that simply on what has happened so far. People say, well, we'll get this shut down before then. I said, people, listen to me. There are 2,000 plus ships standing off the Strait of Hormuz. What do you think is happening to all the lines of communication, the lines of commerce, the lines of the sustenance of the world with those 2,000 ships and 20,000 sailors sitting idle off the Strait of Hormuz in the North Arabian Sea or the Sea of Oman? What do you think is happening? And what do you think is happening now that all the ships that escaped, as it were, before we started this war, are at their port or finished at their port, having offloaded their cargoes, their oil, their gas, their urea, their helium, whatever it might be from the region, having offloaded it, and now there is no way to go back and get more.
Right, so as you can see, this oil is about to cause a global recession, and in some areas or countries, or even continents, I think there actually is already, well, technically we're already in a global recession, right? I think what he's really talking about is a depression, or really what it is an economic collapse. But to what I was saying before is that with these oil shortages, with all these countries in a recession anyways, but these oil shortages will increase their recession. For instance, I believe Europe is about to hit their shortage soon. I think some Asian countries are making provisions right now. Right, so when you start to see where provisions had to start being made, right, for this energy crisis, you're going to really start to see the economic collapse start to really hit. So this is why I say, really stay prayed up in Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, because there's no way you can actually prepare for this at all, right? There's nothing you can really do. So if that's why with the one man, he said he was gonna plant a garden. Well, their garden's gonna be seized eventually. Right, eventually it's gonna come to the point where you may have to take the sea hip. But of course, as those of us who stand firmly in Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, we won't have to. And it says right here, let's get this out. Actually, get this out. It says Ecclesiastes chapter 39, verse 26. The whole principal things for the whole use of a man's life are water, fire, iron, salt, flour, wheat, honey, milk, and the blood of the grape, and oil, and clothing. And blood of the grape, I believe, just means wine. So, as you can see, with this oil shortage, though, how are you going to be able to get to water? How are you going to be able to get the iron? How are you able to get any basic materials? Right, so mass starvation would actually accompany that. It says right here in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 13, therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Right. You're going to see a lot of people of all types of stature, built, skinny, fat, start to be famished, start to, be very thirsty. They won't have any food, especially for our people who knew the truth, right, but chose not to. Famine is very painful. It says in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. Well, really, Yahweh. So, the thing is, we don't live on bread alone, obviously, but by every word of Yahweh, Bert. But the world, they live on physical food alone. So how much will they starve when that physical food is not there? When they haven't fasted before? When they haven't kept any holy days? When they've been living a life of no discipline in the Lord? So, hope this lesson was edifying. And honestly, we do need Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai in these times. Our bread isn't just physical food, but the word of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. So I hope this lesson is edifying. Hopeful luck and luck. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Shalom.